Yes, this is another Vagabond video titled in a way that makes you think that it is actually my first Vagabond video, but hey, it's time for the monthly renewal of my prescription to making a Vagabond video every month and pretty much talking about the exact same thing every video. Now there's a lot to talk about with this series, to be fair, but it just turns out that in every video I end up talking about the same thing because a lot of Vagabond revolves around the same topic and the same lessons throughout the story. However, every arc in this story is pure brilliance to the point where the only thing stopping it from being the greatest thing I've ever laid my eyes on is Berserk. I know I've made plenty of videos on Vagabond, but to be completely honest, man, those videos look and sound like some random 12-year-old just went into his basement and started recording a video with his iPhone 7. And I can't have disgraceful content like that talking about a story like Vagabond. Now before my audience retention drops to the negatives because I'm kinda stalling the point of this video, allow me to professionally inform you of why you can't die without reading this manga, as if it wasn't already evident by the numerous hundreds of people that have claimed this manga is the greatest thing they've ever laid their eyes on. I don't actually know if it's hundreds of people, I just know I think it is the greatest thing ever, besides Berserk of course. Now this samurai manga combines the coolest elements from the feudal Japan era into making some of the most brilliant fight scenes and well drawn out encounters between long awaited and anticipated characters. The protagonist Musashi is like the best part of the story. This guy has got to be one of the coolest main characters to ever grace the manga world. But what's interesting is he's not just some random edgelord cool character, he's a very deep character. Now listen, I know all these guys talking about manga, doing analysis, are talking about deep characters and character development, but trust me, Musashi is a different breed entirely. The thing that everyone talks about with Vagabond is the development of Musashi, but the thing that's less talked about is the development of the other characters. I know Musashi is developed to the godlike degree that everyone says he is. It's facts. Musashi is probably the best character in manga, not only in Vagabond, except of course Guts, because you know, Berserk. Anyways, I'm gonna try my best not to go off on another tangent about character development. Alright, that might be a lie. Listen, it's hard not to talk about the development of a main character in a seinen series because seinen series are pretty much about the development of the main character for the most part. The craziest part about all of this is that Musashi isn't the only one developing as you read Vagabond. That's right, you get character developing yourself. Think about that. It's crazy because it's not the characters in the story alone that are getting the development. It's literally you sitting on your computer chair with terrible posture getting character development. How crazy is that? The thing that separates Vagabond from other manga is the philosophy. This story implements religion, stoicism, the way of the samurai, all of that greatness into the utmost perfection that is this story. If you aren't a religious person, Vagabond will make you religious. If you swore that you did not believe in God, you will believe in God once you read Vagabond. It is that moving and that life-changing. I swear to you, I turned from a boy to a man just by reading this manga. And some of you, based on what I'm saying in this video, might still think I'm a boy. Now, let's get a bit serious here, okay? I haven't been very serious this video. I've been goofing off and just having a good time. But when we talk about Vagabond, we need to be a little more serious. One of the biggest ideas in Vagabond is the essence of discipline and strength through the way of the samurai. You see, Vagabond is cool in its battles and artworks, but the real beauty of the story is in the characters and their own experiences, how their experiences stick with them throughout their lives, and how they change their perspectives on their experiences to make their lives better. The biggest example is not only Musashi, though he is a pretty big example, but Marahachi, the antithesis to Musashi, the character who does the opposite of what Musashi does. Like if Musashi's out there killing dudes, Marahachi's out there killing himself by drinking and laying with chicks that kind of look like, well, I don't want to get cancelled. Takehiko Inoue is an author that puts an unfathomable amount of time into developing the characters in his stories. You may have heard of Inoue because he's probably one of the most popular mangaka out there, but what's cool is that his only story is not Vagabond. I know it's crazy, an author making more than one story. Inoue has made Real, Slam Dunk, and Vagabond. Those are the three works I'm aware of that Inoue has made. He might have made a few other smaller manga, but no one's reading that shit, bro. To be honest, Inoue is probably the mangaka I look up to the most because of the documentaries and stuff they've uploaded of him. Like, you just see this guy sitting at his desk. You think, you know, manga art, just know how to draw, know how to write characters, know how to write a good story, and you're good. Inoue is different, man. This guy, literally, every single spread panel is like museum quality. And the most incredible thing about his artwork is that his emotion is placed into the character, meaning that if he's feeling a certain way but he's trying to portray his character in a different way, it just doesn't go together, so he doesn't draw it at that time. If he's trying to make a scene of Musashi being calm and trying to pray, he needs to be in that meditative state himself to actually draw it. And that's why his characters feel so real. That's why his story feels so real. Ignore the fact that Vagabond is based on a real story and Musashi's a real person. Even look at a story like Real or Slam Dunk, which I have not read, so I'm not going to talk about Slam Dunk. But Real, look at the characters in Real. The story is real. Oh my god. You look at these characters and their experiences, and it just feels realistic. It feels like you're connected to these characters, and that's why every moment in Real hits so goddamn hard, man. The first chapter almost had me crying. Like, how many series do that? The point is, Inoue in his character writing, specifically portrayed in Vagabond, is some of the most deepest character writing you will see in a story. Especially, again, I'll keep saying this, the character of Musashi. But there's other characters, Kojiro. Despite being mute and deaf, you still understand the character in a deep way. Denshichiro, Seijiro, a bunch of these side characters that are just opponents from Musashi still get really outstanding writing. Madahachi, as I mentioned before, a character like Shusaku is only introduced for like 20 chapters. Incredible development. I mean, name a character in Vagabond and they're a phenomenal character. That's just the way things work in the story, and that's why I basically think it's perfection. Like, there are people out there who literally don't give any series a 10 out of 10. If they read Vagabond and don't give it a 10 out of 10, I will Now let's talk about samurai, because samurai have got to be some of the coolest things that have ever stepped on this earth. The reason samurai dedicated their lives to the way of the sword was so that they could become unrivaled under heaven. At least that's how it is in Vagabond, so I assume that's how it was for all of feudal Japan. Now Musashi starts out this way as well. Of course, a seinen series with a protagonist that's kind of violent. Crazy. It soon becomes for a different reason though, and this is where Vagabond really goes from great to masterclass. Musashi's initial fights with the Yagyu, Hozoi, and Yoshioka were means of testing his strength, and the more he cut down, the more he realized how useless this path of bloodshed was. This quote is the basic summary of Musashi's character in Vagabond. You look at this character and you think, holy shit, he is so cool. He's literally a samurai who does not walk away from fights, who does not give up, who's just going crazy and killing people left and right. He's such a cool character. He's so strong, except he's not, because the real meaning of strength in Vagabond is completely different. The thing that Musashi has dedicated his entire life to was simply the word invincible. Now this had to do with his daddy issues as well, but the word invincible occupied his life to the point where 22 years of his existence was dedicated to that single word. Despite the fact that he encountered the man known as Invincible, who ended up just being an old man about to die, and still didn't get the true meaning of that word. But the true meaning of that word was that it had no meaning. Now you're probably thinking that sounds weird, that doesn't make any sense. Just read Vagabond. If you read Vagabond, it'll all make sense. Just trust me here. Now I know for a fact that a lot of people will read Vagabond and claim it's life-changing and that it teaches you about how to live life, how to be a better person, and you know, all these things. But can you actually tell me how it impacted your life? Like, I know some people can actually tell me what they learned from Vagabond, but to be honest, the first time I read it around, I learned a few things, but I mainly just read it because it was fun to read and it was a really cool story. And a lot of the time, we learn the lessons but end up forgetting them because we don't really apply them to our life. If all the people who read Vagabond applied the concepts to their life, those people would be quite different, living very different lives. I think that's the beauty of certain stories like Vagabond and Berserk. It gives you what you need to know, but you need to implement it yourself, which kind of goes for all the advice out there. So if you're just out there watching motivational videos, you're not really going to get anywhere without putting in the effort yourself. But before I turn into a motivational channel, let's get back on topic, because it did take me a few rereads to actually realize the lesson and the message of this story. It's not as subtle as you think, but it's quite difficult to implement it into your life and really get what it's trying to say. It took me multiple rereads and revisits to certain parts of the story to actually get what they're trying to say, because the message is much deeper than what it looks like from the surface. Yes, Vagabond tells us to pursue true strength. Wait, what is true strength again? But it also tells us how to go about pursuing it, and that's the most important thing with this story. It uses the mistakes Musashi has made to illustrate to us what we shouldn't do, and yet we still end up doing them. But why is that? Why do we end up still doing them? It is because we are preoccupied. Preoccupation is the #1 reason why Musashi in Vagabond sets out on the journey initially. His preoccupation to becoming invincible under the sun is the whole reason why he ends up where he ends up at the end of the story. Even though it's a great place to end up, it took him a lot of trials and tribulations to just circle back to an answer that he could have realized from the beginning. It's really interesting, right? We say we're gonna do something, but then we end up doing it for a few days and then stop doing it. But why is that? It's because we're preoccupied on the result. Instead of preoccupying on the result, why don't we just focus on the journey to the result and enjoying the journey and embracing everything the journey teaches us? People who do that make it much farther than people who chase the result. In other words, people who are preoccupied with a certain outcome. Preoccupied with a single leaf, you won't see the tree. Preoccupied with a single tree, you'll miss the entire forest. This manga is incredible, oh my god. Picture this, you're climbing a mountain and you focus only on the top and what's there. If you only see the top, then doesn't it mean that every peak or milestone that you pass along your journey through the mountain is meaningless? Because you preoccupy, you don't see the real picture. That's the whole problem with Musashi throughout the first half or so roughly of the story. Because invincible is such a strong motivation for Musashi, because it is that single word that is his motivating factor for becoming this great samurai he ends up becoming, he grows further from it without even realizing it, because his definition of invincible was completely wrong. The real strength in Vagabond, as described by Musashi in a very small panel in a seemingly unimportant chapter, even though it ends up being like one of the most important chapters in the most important arc, the definition is to have a mind that doesn't sway while continuing to move and change. It gets reworded a bunch depending on the translation, but that's the gist of it. Now imagine swimming in the middle of an ocean, okay? You're just sitting there, I don't know why you're in the middle of the ocean, I don't know how you got there. The point is, if you're in the middle of the ocean, can you see how vast it truly is? If you end up preoccupying like Musashi did in the beginning of the story, you're gonna end up waking up one day like me and realize that you wasted X amount of years of your life and ended up making YouTube videos that take way too long to make, all to make and earn zero money from it because YouTube loves its demonetization. And did I also mention that my most viewed video in the last 6 months got age restricted? Okay, that wasn't supposed to happen, but I hope you get the point of the video. Now take a step back and truly realize what is happening. See the real meaning behind what happens to you in your life. The things that happen to you don't only happen to you, but they happen for you. Your girl dumped you, there's a lesson to be learned. Lost your job, well, finding a new one will unlock a plethora of valuable skills. Farted at the bottom of a squat? Okay, yeah, that's an exception, I can't lie. If you preoccupy on a single leaf, you won't see the tree, and if you preoccupy on being preoccupied, you're screwed.